For more than a decade, Nigeria has confronted a heartbreaking and deeply complex crisis: the mass abduction of school children. These kidnappings, often perpetrated by armed insurgents, criminal gangs, or loosely connected militias, have generated fear across the nation and drawn attention from around the world. The stories that emerge from these incidents are devastating. Children forced into forests in the dead of night, parents left in a state of panic and helplessness, and communities struggling to understand how learning itself became a dangerous act. This pattern of kidnappings is not merely a security phenomenon, nor a temporary wave of violence. It is a window into the structural challenges facing Africa's most populous nation: a fragile rural security architecture, deep economic divides, unresolved religious and regional tensions, entrenched corruption, and the long aftershocks of a brutal insurgency. Understanding this crisis requires more than recounting individual incidents. It demands a careful examination of the drivers that allow such abductions to persist, the impacts they inflict on children and communities, and the political and social aftermath that continues to shape Nigeria's trajectory. To understand why school kidnappings have become such a devastating and persistent phenomenon, it is necessary to consider the context in which they occur. Nigeria is a country of enormous diversity: ethnic, linguistic, religious, and geographic. Its population exceeds 220 million, distributed across more than 250 ethnic groups. Geography divides the nation into distinct zones: the arid savannas of the north, the fertile central belt, and the lush forests and waterways of the south. Religion reinforces some of these divisions, with Islam predominant in the north, Christianity in the south, and indigenous belief systems interwoven across regions. This diversity has enriched Nigeria culturally and historically, but it has also produced enduring political and social friction. The North-South religious divide especially has shaped national politics, economic opportunities, and local perceptions of conflict. While religion alone does not explain the rise of school kidnappings, the tension between the Islamic North and Christian South forms a significant part of the environment in which violence occurs, influencing identity, rhetoric, and narratives about security and state legitimacy. Overlaying this diverse social fabric is Nigeria's political structure. The country functions as a federal republic, but authority and influence are unevenly dispersed. State governments possess certain powers, yet most essential security functions are centralized under the federal government. This creates gaps in accountability and responsiveness, particularly in rural areas where local authorities often lack the capacity to protect schools and residents effectively. The economy also plays an essential role in understanding the kidnapping crisis. Nigeria is Africa's largest oil producer, yet this wealth has not translated into widespread prosperity. Economic inequality remains stark, especially between urban and rural regions. Many of the areas most affected by kidnappings suffer from widespread poverty, limited infrastructure, scarce educational resources, and few sustainable livelihood opportunities. These conditions create fertile ground for criminal networks and insurgent movements to operate, recruit, and exploit vulnerable populations. The mass abduction of school children did not begin with the Chibok girls in 2014, but that event brought global attention to a pattern that had been building quietly in the country's northeast. Boko Haram an Islamist movement founded in the early 2000s, radicalized over time into a violent insurgent force. Its ideology rejected Western-style education, which it labeled corrupting and incompatible with its theological vision. As Boko Haram expanded its operations, it targeted schools deliberately, not only to undermine state authority, but to terrorize communities into submission. Before Chibok, Boko Haram had burned classrooms, assassinated teachers, and attacked students as part of its broader campaign of violence. Local communities were already retreating from schools, fearful of what such attacks meant for their children. But the sheer scale and international visibility of the Chibok abduction represented something new. The image of nearly 300 teenage girls taken from their dormitories shocked audiences worldwide and sparked the hashtag #BringBackOurGirls movement, which amplified the crisis in unprecedented ways. Following Chibok, the pattern of school kidnappings expanded beyond the northeast and shifted geographically into the northwestern and central states. Unlike Boko Haram's ideologically driven violence, these later kidnappings were perpetrated largely by criminal bandit groups seeking ransom payments. These groups learned quickly that abducting school children was a profitable enterprise. The mixture of desperation among parents, weak security response, and high ransom payouts created a marketplace of abduction that proved difficult to dismantle. The 2018 Dapchi abduction in Yobe State, the kidnapping of hundreds of boys from Kankara in 2020, and successive raids in Zamfara, Kaduna, Niger, and Sokoto throughout the early 2020s transformed school abductions from isolated incidents into a recurring national emergency. By 2025, multiple raids in a single year provided painful reminders that the crisis remained unresolved. The kidnappings were no longer confined to conflict zones. They became symptomatic of broader governance failures, criminal opportunism, and the normalization of violence in rural Nigeria. Schools symbolize hope, opportunity, and the possibility of a better future. For armed groups, whether ideological or criminal, they also represent soft targets. In many rural areas, schools lack adequate fencing, security personnel, or emergency communication systems. Dormitories are often isolated from major towns and patrolled highways. Many are surrounded by forests or farmlands that provide quick escape routes for kidnappers. Armed groups also understand the emotional weight carried by school children. Communities will do almost anything to ensure the safe return of their children. This makes abductions both psychologically devastating and strategically advantageous for perpetrators seeking ransom, leverage, or publicity. In the case of insurgent groups like Boko Haram, schools also hold symbolic significance. By attacking educational institutions, the group challenges the Nigerian state's authority and disrupts the social structures that might otherwise resist radicalization. For criminal groups, however, symbolism plays a lesser role. Financial gain is the key motivation. Schools offer a concentration of potential hostages whose families, and in some cases, governments, will mobilize quickly to secure their release. This fusion of vulnerability, symbolism, and opportunity underlies much of the kidnapping crisis and provides a lens through which to view the escalating pattern of attacks across the country. Nigeria's federal structure complicates security provision at the grassroots level. While state governments oversee education, they have limited control over police and military forces This leaves many local communities caught between responsibilities. They must manage their schools, but they lack the power to command security interventions. Federal security agencies, meanwhile, face competing priorities and limited manpower. Deployments often focus on protecting major highways, urban centers, and critical infrastructure rather than rural schools. Budgeting constraints further contribute to the problem. Education funding in many states is inadequate even for basic supplies, let alone for substantial security measures. Policymakers express support for safe schools initiatives, but implementation varies widely and often falls short of what is needed. Corruption also plays a role. Funds allocated for security infrastructure sometimes disappear into bureaucratic gaps or private pockets. Cases of collusion between officials and criminal groups have occasionally surfaced, though these remain difficult to prove. Even when corruption is not directly involved, poor coordination among agencies leads to delayed responses, inconsistent intelligence sharing, and ineffective rescue operations. These systemic weaknesses contribute to a sense of distrust among citizens, who may question whether the state is capable of protecting them. The skepticism, in turn, drives some communities to take security into their own hands, forming vigilante units or negotiating directly with kidnappers. Actions that sometimes reduce immediate risks but also create long-term complications. The crisis of school kidnappings in Nigeria emerged from an intricate constellation of interconnected forces rather than from a single source. Political instability, economic hardship, ideological extremism, religious tension, and long-standing social divisions each played a role in shaping an environment where abducting school children became both possible and profitable. The drivers of the crisis intersected in ways that compounded one another, forming a landscape in which violence could flourish and schools could be targeted with alarming ease. A central cause lies in the ideological legacy of Boko Haram. The group began as a movement centered on rejecting Western-style education, which it viewed as incompatible with its strict interpretation of Islam and fundamentally corrupting to society. When Boko Haram evolved into a violent insurgency in the late 2000s, its hostility toward formal education became a defining feature of its campaign. School buildings, teachers, and students symbolized the Nigerian state's authority and the prospect of a modern, pluralistic society. By attacking schools, Boko Haram aimed to destabilize the region, undermine trust in the government, and prevent younger generations from acquiring the knowledge that might empower them to resist extremist influence. Although Boko Haram was most active in the northeast, its high-profile abductions demonstrated to other groups, criminal and ideological alike, that targeting students could generate fear, attention, and leverage. In this way, Boko Haram set a precedent that reshaped the tactics of armed actors across northern and central Nigeria. Alongside ideological extremism emerged a very different but equally influential force: the rise of a ransom-driven kidnapping economy. In several northern states, loosely organized networks of armed men, commonly described as bandits, began to recognize that rural schools offered lucrative opportunities. Abducting children created intense emotional pressure on families and local authorities, who were often willing to pool resources or negotiate discreetly for the safe return of victims. In some instances, intermediaries or local leaders facilitated these exchanges. And though governments frequently denied paying ransom, communities reported that payments of various kinds did occur. These transactions produced an economic feedback loop in which successful kidnappings financed the purchase of better weapons, motorcycles, and communication tools, allowing groups to conduct larger and more sophisticated operations. The profitability of school abductions encouraged imitation, transforming the act from a tool of ideological insurgency into a widespread criminal enterprise that stretched across multiple states. Economic hardship deepened the crisis. Many of the regions most affected by kidnappings suffer from entrenched poverty, limited educational opportunities, and widespread youth unemployment. For young men facing bleak economic prospects, the prospect of joining an armed group sometimes appeared to offer more stability or financial potential than subsistence farming or informal labor. Poverty also shapes the vulnerability of victims. Rural schools often lack basic infrastructure such as perimeter fencing, trained security personnel, or functioning alarm systems. Families struggling economically have few alternatives to public schools and even fewer options for relocating to areas with better security. This economic fragility created a structural vulnerability that armed groups increasingly exploited. The breadth of Nigeria's rural security challenges further enabled the rise of school kidnappings. Large areas of the northwest and central regions consist of forests, savannas, and farmlands that are lightly governed or not governed at all. These landscapes serve as ideal retreat zones for armed groups who rely on the cover provided by dense vegetation and on routes that allow rapid movement between villages and states. Many local police forces lack adequate personnel, transportation, or communication technology to monitor these vast territories effectively. Even when federal troops intervene, they face logistical challenges due to limited familiarity with the terrain, slow coordination between agencies, and the mobility of kidnappers. The porosity of Nigeria's borders also contributes to the problem, allowing weapons to flow into the country and enabling fighters to move with relative ease. In this context, rural schools become soft targets, and abductors act with little fear of immediate interception. Political fragmentation and governance challenges exacerbate these vulnerabilities. Nigeria's federal system divides responsibilities in ways that leave gaps in accountability, particularly regarding security. State governments manage education, yet they do not control the security forces needed to protect schools. Federal authorities responsible for national security often prioritize urban centers and major infrastructure over rural communities. This disconnect leads to inconsistent policies, delayed responses, and a lack of coordination during critical moments. Corruption, whether through the misuse of security funds or through informal negotiations with armed groups, undermines trust and weakens institutional effectiveness. In some cases, political leaders struggle to respond decisively to kidnappings, knowing that overly aggressive tactics could endanger hostages, while inaction might provoke public backlash. These dilemmas sometimes created hesitancy, paralysis, or inconsistent approaches to rescue efforts. The long-standing tension between Nigeria's Islamic North and Christian South forms another structural factor shaping the environment in which kidnappings occur. While these divisions do not directly cause abductions, they influence how violence is interpreted, politicized, and discussed at both local and national levels. historical patterns of governance, colonial administrative choices, economic distribution, and educational traditions contributed to the formation of two distinct regional identities. In the South, where Christian missionary activity was historically strong, formal Western-style education became deeply rooted. In the North, Islamic scholarship shaped educational norms, and Western schooling expanded more slowly. Boko Haram exploited these historical and cultural differences, presenting Western-style education as an unwelcome imposition and framing its ideological narrative in terms of resistance to Southern influence. Even criminal groups with no religious motivations sometimes invoked North-South grievances rhetorically, drawing upon long-standing regional narratives to justify their actions or deflect criticism. Although religion and regional identity are only background factors, they contribute to the wider sense of division and mistrust that complicates national responses to the crisis. Environmental pressures further intensified the crisis. Northern Nigeria has experienced significant climate-related stress, including prolonged droughts, declining soil productivity, and the advance of desertification. As pastoral communities struggle to maintain their herds, they increasingly migrate into central farming regions, where competition for land and water resources sparks conflict. This movement contributes to violent clashes between herders and farmers, the displacement of rural populations, and the spread of weapons across affected regions. Individuals whose livelihoods collapse may turn to banditry as a means of survival, intertwining environmental instability with criminal activity. Finally, a deep erosion of trust in institutions played a defining role in entrenching the kidnapping crisis. Repeated security failures led many citizens to feel abandoned by the state. In areas where responses to kidnappings were slow or ineffective, families often negotiated directly with abductors or turned to vigilante groups for protection. These choices, while understandable, further strengthened the influence of armed groups and weakened the authority of the government. Communities sometimes hesitated to report crimes due to fear of retaliation or disbelief that authorities would act. This hesitation impeded data collection and hindered the development of coherent strategies for prevention. Taken together, these forces, ideological extremism, criminal opportunism, economic marginalization, rural insecurity, political fragmentation, religious and regional tension, environmental stress, and institutional mistrust, interacted to produce one of the most persistent and destabilizing forms of violence in contemporary Nigeria. The crisis of school kidnappings emerged from the convergence of these trends and continues to evolve in ways shaped by this broader social, historical, and political landscape. The history of school kidnappings in Nigeria is marked by a series of harrowing incidents that shook the nation and the world. Each abduction carried its own distinct circumstances, yet together they reveal a repeating pattern. Vulnerable schools, sudden nighttime raids, frantic families, delayed responses, and protracted negotiations. The names of the towns and villages where these tragedies occurred became synonymous with national grief: Chibok, Buniyadi, Dapchi, Kankara, Kagara, Jangabe, Afaka, Tegina, Beninyori, and numerous others. These places, some barely known beyond their local regions before the incidents, became symbols of insecurity and the fragility of rural education. The sequence of major kidnappings, beginning in the early 2000s and continuing throughout the following decade, reflects not only the escalation of violence, but also the transformation of the phenomenon itself. From ideologically driven insurgency in the Northeast to profit-oriented banditry across the Northwest and Central states. Examining some of the most significant cases provides a deeper understanding of how the crisis evolved and how its human cost reverberated through Nigeria's social fabric. The abduction of schoolgirls from the government girls' secondary school in Chibok, located in Borno State, stands as one of the most devastating and widely recognized tragedies in Nigeria's modern history. On an April night in 2014, armed men stormed the boarding school, overpowered the local security presence, and forced hundreds of girls onto trucks. The operation was conducted with chilling efficiency, and by dawn, most of the students had disappeared into the dense Sambisa forest, a stronghold of Boko Haram. This event captured global attention in an unprecedented manner. The number of victims, the youth of the captives, and the symbolism of girls seeking education ignited international outrage and solidarity. The abduction prompted widespread condemnation and sparked a global campaign calling for the safe return of the girls. The incident highlighted the vulnerability of schools in conflict zones and demonstrated the extent of Boko Haram's reach. It also exposed gaps in Nigeria's security response, as confusion and conflicting reports initially surrounded the government's efforts to recover the students. The aftermath of Chibok was long and painful. While some girls eventually escaped or were released through negotiations, many remained missing for years, and some were never found. For the survivors, reintegration into society brought new challenges, including psychological trauma, disrupted education, and stigmatization within their communities. The Chibok kidnapping, more than any other incident, transformed school abduction from a regional crisis into a global humanitarian concern, placing immense pressure on the Nigerian government and influencing subsequent security policies. 4 years after Chibok, another mass school kidnapping occurred under similar circumstances, this time in Dapchi, Yobe State. In 2018, armed militants arrived at the government girls' science and technical college and seized more than 100 female students. The speed and coordination of the attack stunned the local community, which had believed that security improvements following Chibok would protect students from further harm. The Dapchi incident differed from Chibok in significant ways. The abductors appeared to have a clearer intention of negotiating, and most of the girls were returned within a relatively short period. However, the loss of life during the ordeal and the fear generated by the abduction left deep scars on the community. The experience shattered any remaining belief that the earlier tragedy had been an isolated anomaly. Instead, it reinforced the perception that schools in northern Nigeria remained acutely vulnerable and that improvements in security had been inconsistent and fragile. The Dapchi kidnapping also underscored ongoing ideological threats. Although criminal groups were becoming increasingly prominent actors in the broader wave of kidnappings, the Dapchi incident served as a reminder that ideological militants remained active and capable of conducting dramatic attacks. For many families, the event reopened wounds from the Chibok tragedy and reignited national anxiety over the safety of students, particularly girls, in the Northeast. Beginning in 2019 and accelerating rapidly in 2020 and 2021, mass kidnappings shifted westward into states less affected by Boko Haram's insurgency. This expansion corresponded with the rise of armed bandit groups operating across the northwest and north-central regions. These groups lacked the ideological motivations of Boko Haram, but had learned from the insurgents' tactics. They recognized that abducting school children, especially in large numbers, offered a reliable means of acquiring ransom and exerting psychological control over communities. One of the most widely reported incidents was the abduction of students from the government science secondary school in Kankara, Katsina State, in December 2020. Armed men attacked the school at night, forcing hundreds of boys into nearby forests. The timing of the incident was particularly striking, as it occurred while the nation's president, who hails from Katsina, was visiting the state. This coincidence amplified public outrage and highlighted the reach of armed groups even in regions with significant political attention. The Kankara abduction was followed by several others in rapid succession. In early 2021, gunmen raided a school in Kagara, Niger State, abducting students, teachers, and staff. Only weeks later, hundreds of girls were taken from a boarding school in Jangabe, Zamfara State. These incidents unfolded with a grim familiarity. Nighttime raids, overwhelmed local security personnel, long treks into forested hideouts, and uncertain rescue timelines. Each event brought renewed shock, yet each also reinforced the perception that kidnappings had become normalized within the national security landscape. The rapid succession of these abductions underscored a stark reality. Unlike the insurgent-driven kidnappings in the Northeast, where ideology played a central role, the new wave of attacks formed part of a broader criminal economy. Schools became commodities in a marketplace of ransom, and children were used as bargaining tools. This shift represented one of the most troubling transformations in Nigeria's security environment, suggesting that even a decline in insurgent activity would not necessarily end the threat posed by school abductions. The surge in kidnappings did not remain limited to primary and secondary schools. Institutions of higher learning also became targets, particularly in states where university campuses were located near forested areas or lacked strong perimeter security. One notable example involved the abduction of students from a college of forestry in Kaduna State. Gunmen infiltrated the campus, subdued security personnel, and abducted dozens of students, later demanding ransom for their release. Incidents such as this demonstrated that the threat extended across educational levels. Universities and colleges, often assumed to be safer due to their size and relative prominence, were not immune. The psychological impact of these attacks reached young adults who had believed themselves beyond the age of vulnerability to such crimes. For parents, the possibility that older children could also be abducted intensified anxieties and affected decisions about enrollment and travel to campuses far from home. These attacks further strained the education sector, already burdened by low funding and infrastructural challenges. Tertiary institutions with limited budgets struggle to implement security protocols or hire trained personnel, especially in rural campuses. The fact that armed groups could penetrate institutions of higher learning illustrated the depth of Nigeria's security crisis and the difficulty of protecting students at all levels. The stories of students who endured kidnapping reveal the profound physical and emotional suffering inflicted during these ordeals. Survivors describe being awakened abruptly in the night, hearing gunshots, and being forced out of their dormitories by armed men shouting commands. Many recount long marches through forests or rough terrain, often without adequate clothing, food, or water. The abductors moved quickly to avoid pursuit, and the children were compelled to keep pace regardless of exhaustion or fear. While accounts vary depending on the group responsible and the region in which the abduction occurred, many survivors describe the psychological torment of uncertainty. They often did not know where they were being taken, whether they would survive, or whether their families were aware of their fate. Days and nights in captivity blurred together, marked by hunger, exhaustion, and fear of violence. Younger children, unable to comprehend the situation, clung to older students for comfort. Older students tried to protect one another, sharing what little food or reassurance they could offer. The trauma did not end when the students returned home. Many experienced lingering fear, nightmares, and anxiety triggered by loud noises or darkness. Some found it difficult to return to school, associating classrooms and dormitories with danger. Parents, though relieved upon their children's return, confronted their own emotional scars, carrying memories of sleepless nights and the terror of not knowing whether their children would return alive. Communities faced collective trauma, as nearly every family either lost a child to abduction or feared that they might be next. In the wake of each kidnapping, local communities mobilized in whatever ways they could. Parents sometimes walked miles between villages and forest paths seeking information. Town leaders attempted to negotiate with kidnappers, often through intermediaries, while others appealed directly to state governments for assistance. In some regions, local vigilante groups formed or expanded, offering protection to villages that felt abandoned by formal security forces. These responses reflect both resilience and desperation. Communities demonstrated remarkable solidarity, organizing search parties, gathering funds for ransom, and supporting families whose children were missing. At the same time, the growing reliance on vigilante groups revealed the profound erosion of trust in governmental institutions. While such groups occasionally deterred attacks, they also risked escalating conflicts by engaging in armed confrontations without adequate training or oversight. The social impact of kidnappings extended beyond immediate trauma. Educational disruption became a serious concern, as many parents withdrew their children from school, fearing for their safety. Some schools closed temporarily or indefinitely, unable to guarantee protection. This led to significant declines in enrollment in several northern states, particularly among girls, whose education had historically been more vulnerable to disruption. Teachers also faced emotional strain and fear, leading some to relocate or abandon the profession. The cumulative effect was a setback in educational development that threatened long-term social and economic progress. In regions already struggling with low literacy rates, the disruptions created by kidnappings deepened existing inequalities and further isolated communities from opportunities for advancement. The frequency and severity of school kidnappings drew widespread attention within Nigeria and across the international community. Nationally, the incidents sparked intense debates about security reform, the allocation of federal resources, and the responsibilities of state governments. Citizens questioned whether their leaders were capable of protecting them, and demanded transparent, effective responses. Each new kidnapping triggered political pressure, leading to public statements, promises of reform, and, in some cases, changes in security leadership. Internationally, humanitarian organizations, foreign governments, and global media outlets condemned the attacks and called for strengthened efforts to safeguard students. Offers of assistance were extended in the form of training programs, intelligence sharing, and funding for school safety initiatives. While some of these interventions yielded improvements, others were hindered by bureaucratic challenges or inconsistencies in implementation. The global focus on Nigeria's school kidnapping crisis also influenced perceptions of the country abroad. While Nigeria continued to be recognized for its cultural and economic influence, the persistent pattern of abductions raised concerns about stability, investment climate, and governance. This external scrutiny placed additional pressure on policymakers to address the crisis with urgency and coherence. The accumulation of major incidents, the harrowing experiences of abducted children, the trauma sustained by families and communities, and the national and international responses all illustrate the profound depth of the kidnapping crisis. These events shaped Nigeria's collective consciousness and underscored the urgent need for sustainable solutions. At the community level, the wave of school kidnappings left deep social fractures that extended far beyond the immediate trauma of abduction. Families who once relied on shared networks of trust began to view their surroundings with suspicion, and many communities withdrew inward as fear permeated daily life. Markets emptied earlier in the evenings, local gatherings diminished, and routine social interactions became marked by caution. Villages that once viewed education as a collective pathway to advancement now grappled with the fear that sending a child to school might invite tragedy. Teachers fled to safer regions, school buildings fell quiet, and the traditional fabric of communal cooperation strained under the weight of insecurity. The cumulative impact of these attacks also reshaped political and economic conditions on a regional and national scale. States in the north faced rising education sector collapse, shrinking economic productivity, and an overwhelming burden on overstretched security agencies. As enrollment numbers dropped and parents withdrew their children from school, the educational gap between northern and southern Nigeria widened further, intensifying long-standing regional disparities. National debates grew increasingly polarized as leaders attempted to balance decisive security responses with the need to protect hostages. Public pressure mounted on the federal government and conflicting political narratives turned the crisis into a recurring point of contention in elections, policy-making discussions, and legislative deliberations. The persistent instability deterred investment, burdened state budgets, and eroded public confidence in governmental authority. Beyond Nigeria's borders, the kidnappings drew significant international attention, provoking diplomatic responses and shaping global perceptions of regional security. International organizations issued repeated condemnations. Foreign governments offered intelligence and training support, and global media coverage framed the crisis as a defining test of Nigeria's ability to protect its young population. Human rights groups used the events to advocate for expanded protections for children in conflict areas, and humanitarian agencies struggled to assist displaced families and traumatized survivors. The crisis became emblematic of broader challenges facing the Sahel and West Africa, influencing international policy debates on insurgency, state fragility, and the global right to education. As Nigeria navigated these pressures, it found itself balancing sovereignty with the practical necessity of international cooperation. The Nigerian government's responses to the rise of school kidnappings unfolded in multiple phases, each shaped by political realities, security constraints, and public expectations. While authorities consistently condemned the attacks and pledged to safeguard students, their ability to implement effective strategies varied widely, revealing the complexities of governing a vast nation confronting both insurgency and widespread criminality. From the outset, federal authorities adopted a dual approach that combined military operations with policy interventions. Security forces conducted raids on known bandit hideouts, deployed additional personnel to vulnerable states, and attempted to disrupt the networks enabling kidnappings. Yet these efforts often struggled to contain rapidly shifting armed groups. The difficult terrain, limited intelligence gathering capabilities, and the mobility of both insurgents and bandits complicated the success of such operations. Furthermore, the government faced the challenge of protecting hundreds of thousands of students across thousands of schools, most of which lacked adequate infrastructure or security measures. Efforts to reinforce rural schools revealed the stark limitations of available resources, and security deployments often remained temporary or insufficient. In response to public pressure, authorities introduced various policy initiatives aimed at strengthening school safety. One prominent measure was the Safe Schools Declaration, which Nigeria endorsed as part of a global commitment to protect educational institutions in conflict zones. Under this framework, the government pledged to implement surveillance systems, security training programs, and physical reinforcements for school buildings. However, implementation was uneven, with some states making substantial progress, while others remained hindered by funding gaps, bureaucratic delays, or competing priorities. State-level administrators frequently struggled to collaborate effectively with federal agencies, and education ministries lacked the capacity to overhaul infrastructure on a large scale. Another major element of the government's response involved negotiation strategies, both formal and informal. Although officials repeatedly stated that they opposed paying ransom, communities across affected areas reported that security agencies and local leaders occasionally engaged in quiet negotiations to secure the release of abducted students. These negotiations were often driven by pragmatic concerns. Families feared prolonged captivity, and authorities sought to avoid casualties. However, the reliance on negotiation, whether acknowledged or not, sometimes emboldened armed groups who interpreted concessions as a sign of governmental weakness. Debates over ransom payments became a recurring national issue, revealing the tension between moral principles, political pressures, and humanitarian imperatives. The government also attempted to strengthen intelligence coordination through enhanced collaboration among military, police, and state-level security networks. Task forces were formed to track criminal movements, while new communication channels sought to improve the speed of response during kidnappings. Yet challenges remained significant. Corruption within security institutions, insufficient funding, and inadequate equipment limited the impact of these reforms. In some regions, community vigilante groups filled the void left by formal security structures, creating a patchwork of armed actors whose loyalties and methods varied widely. While these groups sometimes succeeded in deterring attacks, they also introduced new risks, including human rights concerns and the potential for localized violence. In addition to security measures, the government recognized the importance of addressing broader socio-economic drivers of the crisis. Initiatives aimed at poverty reduction, youth employment, and agricultural revitalization were introduced in various forms. These programs sought to provide alternatives to banditry by expanding economic opportunities, stabilizing rural livelihoods, and promoting social cohesion. However, the scale of the challenge often outpaced the scope of available interventions. Many communities remain trapped in cycles of poverty, insecurity, and limited access to education, making long-term solutions difficult to achieve without sustained investment. Despite these obstacles, Nigeria's government continued to evolve its strategies, influenced by public advocacy, international support, and shifting patterns of violence. The complexity of the crisis ensured that no single policy or operation could eliminate the threat entirely. Yet the ongoing efforts to protect schools, improve governance, and restore public trust reflected a national acknowledgement that the safety of children and the future of education stood at the center of Nigeria's hopes for stability and development. While government action formed one pillar of the national response to school kidnappings, the resilience and initiative of local communities and civil society organizations emerged as an equally significant force. Across affected regions, ordinary citizens, faith leaders, educators, and grassroots networks mobilized to shield their communities from further harm and to rebuild the sense of collective security that violent actors sought to dismantle. Their efforts were often born of necessity. In many remote towns and villages, formal security presence remained limited, and communities turned to what they had: social cohesion, local knowledge, and shared responsibility to confront threats that directly endangered their children. One of the most visible forms of community response involved the creation of voluntary security networks. These groups, sometimes referred to as vigilante associations or neighborhood watches, operated out of an urgent need to fill the vacuum left by insufficient policing. Comprised of local farmers, traders, and youth leaders, they patrolled forest paths, guarded school perimeters, and monitored suspicious movements around village boundaries. Although their capacity varied widely, the presence of organized community watch groups often deterred opportunistic attacks. Their familiarity with the terrain enabled them to respond swiftly when unfamiliar armed individuals appeared, and their long-standing relationships with local families fostered a sense of mutual protection. Yet these groups also faced significant risks. Confronting heavily armed bandits demanded courage and exposed volunteers to retaliation. Some communities struggled to balance the benefits of such groups with concerns about escalation or the potential for abuses. Nevertheless, they played a crucial role in reinforcing security where official institutions could not. Alongside community-driven protection efforts, civil society organizations expanded their work in education, psychological support, and policy advocacy. Local NGOs organized workshops to train teachers in emergency response procedures, equipping them with skills to guide students during threats or evacuations. Other groups focused on trauma counseling, recognizing that the emotional wounds left by kidnappings could not be ignored. Counselors traveled to affected schools, conducted group therapy sessions, and worked closely with parents to help children reintegrate after periods of captivity. These interventions often filled critical gaps, particularly in areas with limited access to mental health resources. Civil society actors also partnered with international organizations to distribute educational materials, rebuild damaged school structures, and provide temporary learning centers when formal schools remained closed due to insecurity. Through these efforts, they sought not only to restore education, but to assert its importance as a fundamental right that violence could not extinguish. Faith-based organizations, both Christian and Muslim, played a notable role in mediating between communities, authorities, and at times even abductors. Religious leaders, respected across diverse social groups, were often called upon to assist in negotiations, convey information between families and officials, or appeal directly to armed groups to release abducted children unharmed. Their moral authority and social influence proved essential in moments when trust in political institutions had weakened. Sermons, prayer gatherings, and interfaith dialogues reinforced the message that children, as symbols of the community's future, must not be targeted, and that violence served only to deepen societal divisions. In regions where religious tensions simmered, these leaders emphasized unity and mutual concern, helping counter the narratives that extremists sought to exploit. Youth organizations and student associations also emerged as important voices in the national conversation. Students who had lived through attacks spoke publicly about their experiences, humanizing the crisis in a way that statistics could not. Their testimonies prompted broader discussions about mental health, the future of education, and the responsibilities of government and society. Youth-led advocacy campaigns called for improved school infrastructure, strengthened child safety laws, and increased investment in rural education systems. Through marches, public forums, and social media movements, young Nigerians asserted their right to safety and learning, transforming trauma into activism and demanding reforms that older generations had long struggled to achieve. Diaspora communities added another dimension to civil society engagement. Nigerians living abroad organized awareness campaigns, raised funds for victim support programs, and partnered with international NGOs to pressure governments and global institutions to assist in strengthening school protection initiatives. Their contributions amplified global attention and ensured that the crisis remained visible within international policy discussions. Online campaigns, petitions, and global solidarity events helped sustain momentum, reminding the world that behind each incident of mass abduction were children whose futures hung in the balance. Through all these efforts, communities and civil society organizations demonstrated a profound resilience that stood in stark contrast to the destabilizing intentions of armed groups. Their actions revealed the enduring strength of social bonds and highlighted the essential role of grassroots initiatives in confronting complex security challenges. While they could not replace the responsibilities of government, they provided crucial support, advocacy, and emotional healing in a period marked by fear and uncertainty. Their work affirmed that the protection of children and the preservation of education were not merely political goals, but shared obligations upheld by society's collective will. The school kidnappings that swept across Nigeria over the past decade have left an indelible mark on the nation, reshaping communities, altering political priorities, and challenging long-held assumptions about security and education. What began as an extremist tactic rooted in ideological hostility toward Western-style learning eventually evolved into a sprawling criminal enterprise, fueled by economic hardship, weak governance, and the vulnerabilities that accompany rural isolation. These kidnappings did not occur in a vacuum. They unfolded within a broader historical landscape defined by regional disparity, religious tension, environmental strain, and long-standing mistrust in state institutions. Each of these elements interacted in ways that allowed armed groups, whether insurgents or opportunistic bandits, to weaponize fear and target children, the very embodiment of the nation's hopes for the future. Yet the story of Nigeria's school kidnapping crisis is not solely one of violence and institutional fragility. It is also a narrative of resilience, adaptation, and collective determination. Families, teachers, community leaders, civil society organizations, faith networks, and youth advocates mobilized in remarkable ways to protect one another, restore disrupted learning environments, and demand accountability from those in power. Their efforts, ranging from trauma support to school rebuilding, from community watch groups to national advocacy campaigns, demonstrated that even in the face of profound insecurity, societies can find ways to reinforce the values that violent actors seek to destroy. Education, far from collapsing under pressure, became a rallying point for unity and resistance. The government's response, though uneven and challenged by logistical, political, and economic constraints, reflected an evolving recognition that the safety of schools sits at the heart of national stability. Efforts to strengthen security, reform policy, expand social programs, and collaborate with international partners signaled an acknowledgement that no single strategy could address such a complex phenomenon. While shortcomings remain, and while the threat has not entirely disappeared, the collective experience of confronting these kidnappings has pushed Nigeria toward a deeper understanding of the structural issues: poverty, marginalization, governance gaps, and social division that must be addressed to create lasting peace. Ultimately, the crisis affirmed a broader truth. The fight to protect children is inseparable from the struggle to secure a nation's future. The trauma endured by thousands of students and families will not be forgotten, nor should it be. Their experiences underscore the urgent need for continued investment in safe schools, social cohesion, and equitable development. As Nigeria moves forward, the lessons learned from this turbulent period offer a guiding path, one that highlights the importance of inclusive governance, community-driven resilience, and a steadfast commitment to ensuring that every child can learn without fear. Thank you for watching and for spending time with this important story. If you found this exploration insightful, consider supporting the channel by liking the video and subscribing for more in-depth historical analysis. Your engagement helps bring attention to topics that shape our understanding of the world. If you'd like to continue learning, feel free to explore the other videos on the channel, where complex events, past and present, are broken down with clarity and context. As always, thoughtful discussion is welcome in the comments, and respectful conversation helps keep this space meaningful for everyone. Until next time, thank you for being part of this community, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.